Chapter 2. The Reign of Terror. Beneath the despotism of one only, or of several, we risk becoming the victim. Beneath democratic despotism, besides the same danger multiplied 100-fold, we run another still more horrible, that of becoming executioners. Popular Society of Marseille. The Cambriere. Arrival of my family. Saint Maximin. The dictatorship of a little town. The suspected. The carts with the victims. Robespierre and his brother. It is not yet time. I had departed with the deputation from Ajaccio, and a favorable wind wafted us to France in 24 hours. I had left it about 4 years without having finished my studies at the seminary of Aix, and I was now about to reappear in it, charged with a political mission. My vanity was exalted to so high a pitch that I fancied myself a personage of sufficient importance, who could not fail to attract the notice of the crowd which covered the port of Marseille. Where we landed in the evening, we scarcely allowed ourselves a moment of repose, so great was our anxiety to arrive at the popular society. In a vast saloon which admitted very little light, we were seated, the members of the society, all of them with red caps on their heads. The galleries were filled with noisy women. As soon as the president had announced that a deputation of patriots from Corsica were the bearers of important news, a hearing was allowed us, and I was called to the tribune. Before I had thought of what I was to say, I began by declaring that the nation was betrayed in Corsica, and that we were come to invoke the aid of our brothers. As I was ignorant at that moment of the flight of my family, I did not feel any personal hatred against Paoli. I wished to keep fair with him, but the acclamations from the galleries augmented in proportion to the violence of my words, and for the first time I experienced how much the passions of those who listen have power over those who speak. Carried away by the cries and the applauses from the galleries, I soon began to talk in a manner calculated to increase their excitement. It was not only a speedy succor that I demanded, but I painted Paoli as having abused the national confidence, and who had only returned into his island that he might deliver it up to the English. They, above all, were not spared in my figures of rhetoric. It was the chord most likely to touch the feelings of my auditors, and I made it my favorite theme. I was overpowered with embraces and compliments. They would not let me quit the tribune. I chattered away for about 2 hours at random. Motion upon motion followed, one after the other, an order for printing my speech, a message to the administrators of the departments to send troops to my aid of Ajaccio, a deputation of 3 members to accompany us to the Jacobins of Paris to denounce the treason of Paoli and demand vengeance. All these measures were adopted with urgency and unanimity. My colleagues not having funds sufficient for the journey to Paris, I determined upon accompanying the deputies of Marseille alone, and we left the assembly together at midnight. Solitude and repose having called my mind the image of that Paoli, who for so long a time had been the object of my worship, began to trouble my inmost soul in a manner that very much resembled remorse. I recalled in mind our conversations at Rustino. I had been uttering without premeditation sentiments in direct opposition to those which, for several months, I had heard proceed from lips which I revered. Furious cries against Paoli had replied to my impassioned eloquence. They had associated with me to accompany me to Paris a set of men whose repulsive aspect, savage language, the tone of the owl in their manners had disagreeably surprised me. After an agitated sleep, I awoke discontented and undecided. The Marseille deputation came to fetch me to breakfast with them at the cafe. I followed them. They conducted me to the Cambriere, the principal street of Marseille. I admired that long place surrounded with superb edifices. An immense crowd of men, women, and children were walking and pushing against each other to get on. I inquired of one of the brothers and friends if it was a day of festival. Oh no, he replied with great tranquility. It is only about 20 aristocrats who are making a tumble. Don't you see them? I looked in the direction to which he pointed, and I beheld the guillotine. Red with blood! At work! It was the richest merchants whom they had for above a quarter of an hour been murdering. And that crowd, whom their bounty had so often fed, were then walking in the street of the Cambriere to enjoy the spectacle. And the shops were full of customers as usual, and the cafes were open. And the cakes and gingerbread were circulating around as upon the day of a fair. Never shall I forget the first time I walked in the streets of Marseille. I left the coffee house upon I know not what pretext, as soon as possible, and I declared the next day that I would not go to Paris, that the deputies of the Marseille Club did not want me to accompany them to fulfill their mission, and that I should await the promised succors to return to Corsica with my companions. A few days afterwards, my fugitive family arrived in the port of Marseille, deprived of every resource, but full of courage and good health. Joseph, Napoleon, and myself struggled against our ill fortune. Napoleon, an officer of artillery, devoted to the chief part of his income towards the support of his family. Joseph was appointed commissary of war, and I was placed in the administration of the military subsistences. Under the title of refugee patriots, we obtained rations of ammunition, bread, and those moderate succors suffice to maintain us, aided above all by the good management and economy of our excellent mother. The recital of the dangers that she had met, the burning of our property, and the order to take us dead or alive that had been given by Paoli would soon have vanquished all further scruples on my part, and I should have gone to Paris very willingly if the Marseille deputation had not already set out. At the same time, my employment required my presence at St. Maximin, a small town a few leagues distant from Marseille, and I went there to succeed the keeper of the military stores, who was promised to the rank of inspector. The Republic had been but a few months in existence, and its arms victorious over foreigners plunged deeper every day into its own vitals. Already the populace were become too much accustomed to the scaffold. Woe to those who stop, had said the savage Coyote d'Orbois. The orators of the Gironde, grown wise too late and desirous of enjoying their victory, had wished to stop when the 31st of May arrived to overturn them. The departments that had embraced the defense had laid down their arms. Danton and Robespierre had pushed the Republic beyond all limits. To mark with one word that melancholy epoch, the title of moderate was a sentence of death. The Constitution, purely democratic, of 1793 was little worthy of its author, the philosopher Condorcet. Although accepted by the primary assemblies, it was about to be suspended as impracticable, and the dictatorship of the convention was sustained by a levy en masse, by the laws against the suspected, by the forced loan and the maximum, but above all by the irresistible valor of our armies, who had thrown down all obstacles before them. The convention marched victorious up to their knees in blood. Lyon and La Vendée alone dared to resist that terrible dictature. Every commune in France, from the largest to the smallest, had a club and a revolutionary committee which absorbed all the power when the commissaries of the convention were absent. Such was the crisis which agitated all the fibers of society when I found myself launched at 18 years of age in the middle of Provence, separated from my family, far from all my beloved countrymen, alone, a stranger without acquaintance in a town divided into parties, furiously exasperated against each other.